Hello and welcome to this essential series for Rebelle 3. The idea of this series is that we're going to be covering the things that you definitely need to understand in order to make most effective use of Rebelle for the new user. So that said, we're going to start here where we begin when we first open Rebelle for the first time, which is the new artwork dialog. Now you can see here that we have a number of presets that we can choose, and we can also create our own by simply coming over here and setting the width and the height. You can also see that we can set the resolution here, and then we have the ability to set the units that we're working with, whether it be pixels, centimeters, or inches. And then we can be either working in a portrait orientation or a landscape orientation. And we also have a number of different presets that we can work with here. We have print, screen, and favorites. Now, in addition to that, we have down here, once we have a custom size that we have set here, we can add a preset, or we could select one of these and click the minus key if it's a preset that we made. Now, in addition to that, as we're setting up our presets, we can also choose the canvas. And we'll come back to this later, but I wanted you to remember that we're able to set whatever canvas settings we want here before we even open the document. However, since we already have a document open, I'm not going to worry about showing this every single time that we open Rebelle because we already have a document open. And if I'm just wanting to do some scribbling or some sketching or something like that, then this is going to be just fine. So I'm going to say, don't show at startup. I'm going to say, okay. Now that said, we get the same document because those were the default settings. The very first thing that I want to talk about once we're inside of Rebelle is this concept of the user interface. Most of this user interface is going to be over here controlled by the window menu item. So if I click on this, what you're going to see is that we have check marks next to a number of these windows. And what you can see is that the names correspond to some of the panels that we have out here in the workspace. So let's go ahead and talk about these panels that we currently have in this user interface. You can see we have tools. This is where we get things like the different types of media that we're going to work with. And then down here, we have a subcategory for each tool. So right now, we've currently got the watercolor tool selected. So we have options for the watercolor tool, as well as various brushes that we can work with for that watercolor tool. Then over here, we have the Navigator. And next to that, you can see we have a tab for tilt. So if I click the tab, you can see there's tilt. So we can switch back and forth by simply clicking the tab. Over here, we have color and color set, and you can see there's two tabs there. And then down here, we have layers, and these are all very common types of commands that you would find, with possibly the exception here of tilt, in other graphics applications. So if you're familiar with other graphics applications, you're going to find that a large percentage of the user interface is going to seem fairly familiar. However, there are some quirks to working within Rebelle, and I want to point out some of the ways in which Rebelle might be different from packages that you're used to working with. The first is that every one of these panels is going to have a single line and then three lines. And the single line is going to collapse the grouping of panels that we currently have. So if I click this, you can see that both the tilt and navigator areas are going to collapse, giving us more space for these other guys. If I click that, it's going to bring it back. And then over here, we have the three lines. And if I click this, what I'm going to get is a menu. Now this menu is going to be context. And what I mean by that is that the context of the current panel is going to determine what we get when we click on this menu. So even though I have Navigator currently set here with tilt, and they're both in the same area, if I come over here to tilt and I click, you're going to see that the menu that I get that is in the context of tilt is going to be different than the menu that I get when I'm in the context of Navigator. So you want to be aware of the fact that you're going to get different menus based on whatever tab or whatever panel you're in. Now that said, if you want to close a panel, then you have two options. The first is you can come over here to the three lines and you can click close. And some other panels are going to have an X that you can click in this area because they have no other commands other than a close command. And then over here under window, we could also come over here and turn off the check mark. So if I turn off the check mark for tools, you'll see that this panel goes away. You can see that went away. And if I click on the tools again, you'll see it comes back. Likewise, we have a number of panels that aren't currently open. We have stencils, preview, reference image, brush creator, and visual settings. And any of those could be opened and incorporated into the user interface at any point in time that you might want. Now, if you wanted to move panels around, what you can do is, first of all, you can come down here into the area between panels. And you see as I hover over that, I'm getting this line with two arrows. And this is telling me that I'm able to click and drag here in order to resize these panels. I'm also able to do the same thing on the side. So you can see I can give more space to these guys if I want to, or less, all the way down to the minimum. So I have some ability to move things around in that way, but I also have the ability to pull things off. And so maybe I'll come over here to the Navigator. I'm going to click on the word Navigator, and I'm going to go ahead and drag that off. You can see as I do that, this becomes a floating panel. Now, what I can do is I can dock this panel anywhere I want to within the user interface. Now, some panels will not allow you to dock to the top or the bottom, but the Navigator will. So I'm going to go ahead and take it to the top. You can see I could drop it here if I wanted to, or I could drop it to the bottom. You can see how I can do that. I can also take it over here and dock it right here with the watercolor properties if I wanted to. Or if I go down a little bit, you can see that a space opens up underneath and I could dock it there, or I could pull it back off. And I could also dock it above. As long as I wait for the space to appear, it'll go right into that slot. So you can see these guys can be easily customized into whatever configuration works best for you so that you have the smoothest possible workflow. Now, that said, there are some other things that you need to be aware of. The first is that there are often times that you don't want to see all this user interface as you're painting or drawing. There are a couple options that we can use in order to do this. The first one is going to be over here under View, and you can see we have an option here to enter full screen. What this is going to do is it's going to get rid of this top line here, and also if you happen to have the bar down here at the bottom, it'll also get rid of that. So I'm going to come over here and say enter full screen. And then once I've done that, the next thing that I can do is I can come over here to Window, and I could come over here and I could say that I want to turn off the Show Panels. And I want to point out to you that this has a keyboard shortcut that's associated with it, and currently here it's the tab. So if I click that, all of the panels go away. If I want to bring that back, I can simply hit the tab key on my keyboard, and that'll bring them back. So you can see that we can easily have our panels up while we're working in the user interface, hit the tab key, and then begin to paint or draw. And then as soon as we need our panels again, all we need to do is simply hit the tab key again, bring them up, and then hit the tab key again to be able to work in a way that has nothing in our way. So that's definitely advantageous. Now, that said, if you have a layout that you like that's different from the default, then what you can do is you can come over here to Window, and you could choose to export that layout. And then at any point in time, you could come back over here and import that layout again, and you can get right back to whatever it was that you exported out. So that's a good idea to have a number of different layouts for different types of projects that you might be working on, where maybe a layout works really well for one particular project, but it doesn't work so well for a different type of project, say drawing and painting. Now, that said, if you've made changes to your user interface and you don't want to keep them, what you can do is you can choose to come over here and say reset layout to default. Now, once you've done that, what'll happen is it'll tell you that you need to restart Rebelle in order to have everything reset back to its default. But once you do that, all the panels will be back to where they were when I just got done opening up Rebelle for the first time. Now, that said, I want to point out one other option here, and this is lock panels. So what lock panels is going to do is it's going to keep me from pulling things off. So if I come over here to color and I try to pull that off, you can see I can't pull it off. However, what I can do is I can still scale things. So the idea here is that I'm not able to pull things off, but I am able to move them around in their place. In the slots that they exist in, they are going to be malleable in the sense that I can move them around and give more space to one panel or less to another. However, I'm not able to pull them off and reposition them. In the same way over here, if I try to come over here and I try to dock this, you can see I'm not able to dock that. And the reason why is because I have the lock set. So I'm going to come over here, turn off the lock. Then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to put the Navigator back over here with the tilt where it originally was. And we're going to go ahead and pick up from this spot in the next video.